Hello, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to Golden Hour apparently. So today we're doing another how-to video. So before we get into it, please hit like, please hit subscribe, especially if you think this video has helped you out. And even if you're just new here or you want to see more how-tos, anything like that, just please hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, really appreciate it. So today we're doing a W203 Mercedes brake caliper. So my bleed nipple snapped off at some point while I was doing something else, and I can't get it out. It's really rounded in there, it's like cheese, the metal. So we are going to be doing swapping the full caliper. It was kind of binding anyway, so it was kind of necessary. So without further ado, we've got the car up in the air, we've got it safely secured, still got the jack under, got some axle stands as well, and yeah, let's get straight into it. Okay, so we're looking at the caliper. At this point, if you have, or if you don't intend to fully flush the brake system, you can save yourself a lot of issues by using some brake hose pliers. They're like rounded, don't use normal ones, otherwise you might crush or damage the brake hose. But you can use the brake hose pliers and they'll clamp around the brake hose and allow you to barely leave any, lose any brake fluid, and you'll also barely introduce any air into the system. But I'm going to be doing a full flush anyway because this brake fluid's manky. So I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to capture what comes out, and then we're going to do a full flush anyway, which I'll show you how to do. So on the back of the caliper, see the contrast is a bit crap here due to the lighting that we've got going on. But just where the caliper is, so we are just at the top here, just behind there, we have a 14mm, and that is where the brake hose goes onto the caliper and connects. So I'm going to undo that slightly, just crack the pressure off, and then leave it on, because obviously you can't undo it because it'll twist all this. So just crack it off a tiny little bit, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so next, where the you can kind of see these rubber boots at the end of them, you'll find a 12mm bolt. So there, and there's one underneath as well. So just crack those off. There you go. That one's now coming out, and I'll just do the bottom one, I'll be in the way. Okay, just remove the bottom one. I'll have it nearly out, just so it only takes a couple of turns to get out. Next, just push the piston back in to the caliper. So just leave it in between use the brake pad as, use the brake disc as like the leverage, and then push the piston back in, and then you know the piston is back, so this should come off in a second. Remove these bolts. Threads look good on these. I did order a set of replacement with replacement hardware, but they haven't come, so I had to grab what I can. So I'll probably take these back out at some point and replace them with all new hardware when eventually that arrives. Then we can start to take the caliper off. So just lever it out like this. It's on the bottom as well, and then the caliper comes out. Okay. And then what we need to do is just wind the caliper off the brake hose. I'm just going to get something, actually, I'm just going to put that back there a sec, and I'm just going to get something to catch all the drips. Okay, so take that back off, wind it out, and we're probably going to dump a lot of brake fluid. You might not if you've clamped the hose off. And just hold the hose so there's no damage to that as well. If you aren't replacing the hose, you don't want that to get damaged. Okay, there we go. So it's dripping brake fluid. Not too much, but here is the old caliper off. So what do we do now? We want to take these slide pins out. So they just simply pull out, top and bottom, and we want to clean these up and re-grease them. And I have actually got replacement rubber boots. They look like this, and they go in this way to the back of the caliper. So you can take these rubber boots off and replace them. We'll do that in a sec at a workbench. So put them somewhere they're not going to get too dirty if you're not replacing them. Then we want to take the pads off as well, inspect them as well. I've got plenty of meat left on mine, as you can see. Bit of glazing but not loads. The disc, there isn't too much of a lip. There is a little bit on the back, but not real bad. And at this point you can replace anything else you're going to replace. Like there's these sort of seats where the pads sit. replace them, or I'm just going to wire brush and clean them up. So I'm also going to use wire brush on the surface of the pads where because I'm not replacing these, where these glide backwards and forwards, and then we're going to apply some copper grease on there as well so they don't squeal. Brake assembly grease is better, or anti-squeal grease it's sometimes called, is better, but I don't have any of that to hand because again my order with all that stuff on hasn't come yet. So yeah, just remember the orientation. The one with on this side, the front left side, if you sat in the car, has this little nodule coming out here, and that goes on the back. So let's clean these up. Don't forget to clean up the actual surface of the caliper carrier as well. Just where anything sits, so mainly in here where these little spring guidey things sit. Clean those up the best you can. Again, I'm not going to go too ham because they sit in there as well, but just if you can, just give them a clean up while you're in there. It takes 2 minutes and it's you know, worth it. Okay, clean that all up, give it a square with brake cleaner. Next I'm just going to clean up these little things. Careful not to cut yourself on these, quite sharp. Clean it up so there's any light, so that any heavy oxidation and rusting's gone. Again, you can replace these, but my order of bits hasn't come, so but I need this car to be on the road for the weekend, so I am doing this now. Just reinstall these, so just clip in these bits forward, the raised bits clip onto the gaps. Okay, those are on there. Just clean up where the brake pads slide, so it's the little wings that come out. Don't worry about too much the front and back, it's more like the top and bottom, the thin side profile of them. Some more this side and this side, and just rinse and repeat that on both brake pads. Right, next, like I say, just add a bit of copper grease. You don't want to add too much, less is more on this. So just on the surfaces, don't know if it'll focus on that. Just on the surfaces where it's going to contact the carriers and those like little slidey bits. Okay, and we've got the pads back on now that we've greased them up, so you can see how they sit. There's like these little channels there, and those little wings or ears just go in there, so you kind of got to get it close, slip it through, and then push it in. But yeah, pretty easy. So just get that sat tight against there, and then what we're going to do is focus on these slide pins. So I'm again going to use copper grease. It's not the correct thing, but like I say, I've got a kit with the correct lube going on, so I'll just take these off and re-grease them. It's no issue. I can leave the caliper on while I do that. I'll just take these off one at a time and clean them. So got to get the car back. So let's clean this with brake cleaner and just an old microfiber or a rag or something. Put the new rubber boots on, and then we'll get them re-greased and back on the car. Well, put the caliper on and then get it back on the car. Okay, next we want to just get the caliper sat in position. So how we want to go about that is, there's the threads here where the brake hose goes in on the bottom, and it's obviously important not to rotate this brake hose, and you probably won't anyway because it's fastened at the tops of the brake lines. So you've got to wind the caliper onto the hose. It's a bit weird, but just get it started. Be careful not to drop it or cross thread it or anything. And again, hold the hose. It's hard to show you what I'm doing, but I'm basically just dropping it, like I said, not to. Support the weight of it. You might get a bit of brake fluid everywhere, but you can clean that off with brake cleaner afterwards. I've kind of got that to the point where it's nearly tight in there. Just slide it over, slide it into position. It won't want to hang, and what you'll need to do is you'll need to then put your pins in straight away. So put your pins in, put a bolt into there just to hold it. Okay, that's not going anywhere, so let's grease these up. I discovered, obviously, I didn't want to line them around, so clean these up. Okay, and then put a bit of copper grease on here as well. Again, it's important not to overdo it. but you do want enough on there. So you don't want it 3 inches thick. You want a nice good coating on there. I can put one of our rubber boots on. So again, down to the base, there's like a splined looking thing in there. Push that right onto there. So it sits down onto the base. And there is your seal reinstalled. And I've got excess on here, I'll just wipe that off. It gets everywhere. Okay, now I'm going to reinstall these onto the car, so I'm going to do that twice. Okay, so I've got everything loosely in there. I'm just going to make sure that the brake hose tightens up properly into the caliper without there being any major issues, just because depending on which part of the thread you start winding on, it's impossible to know. It might just be very slightly off, so like when I was hand tightening it, it was coming out a tiny bit, like re-loosening itself, but once I nip it up it shouldn't be an issue. Okay, so that's tightened up in there. I'm just going to brake cleaner everything down. Careful not to flush out the copper grease you've just put into the where it slides, but yeah, clean everything down. Once you've done that, you'll be able to see if there's any leaks. So I'm just going to see, make sure that it isn't dripping or anything. Wait for everything to dry off and use a torch to inspect in there. In the meantime, I'm just going to tighten those bolts up at the back, the 12mm that actually hold the caliper on. Okay, for the brake flush, locate your brake reservoir. So that is there on these, underneath that little plastic cover. And then when you're going to bleed them, we'll get set up first and then we'll talk about the flushing. When you're going to bleed them, you want to start from the furthest away point from the reservoir, because that allows all the fluid to come out along with any air that's trapped in the system, which it probably will be now. So if you look back, we've got the driver's side rear in the UK, and then the passenger side is the same distance but a bit further that way, so it's going to be the driver's side, the passenger side rear on the UK cars that we're going to bleed first. So I'm going to raise the back end of the car up and support it, take both rear wheels off, and then we're going to bleed the left hand side if you sat in it, and then the right hand side, and then we're going to move forward and do the caliper that we've just done, because that's then the next furthest away, and then we're going to do the one that's pretty much underneath the reservoir. So let's get the car jacked up by the diff, put some axle stands under there, and then I'll show you what we're doing next. Okay, so we're on the back caliper, and what I've done is here's my setup. I've got a tube, should probably put that in there, coming down off the bleed nipple. That is a 6mm internal diameter PVC tube that you can get off Amazon. You can get a bleed kit, but I'm just going to get my wife to pump the brakes while I'm doing this. And I have liberally sprayed the bleed nipples on these back ones, so as to not snap them with penetrant, wire brushed and penetrant, wire brushed and penetrant. So they are also, it's still a bit chewed up, but I can just about do it and then nip it up, so that's fine. They are reverse threaded. So, and what you're going to do is you're going to crack it off, so just you open it to the right, and then you're going to get them to press the brake in and then hold it at the bottom, and when they're holding it, you're going to just close it and then they're going to let off. Then you're going to crack it again, just like that. Just gently, you only have to crack it a tiny bit, then they're going to press the brakes all the way down to the bottom, and then you're going to tighten it again. And you're going to keep doing that until there's no, you'll see the brake fluid start coming out, and you're going to do that until there's no fluid in, no fluid. You're going to do that until there's no air in the tube. Because I'm doing a flush, what I'm also going to do is, obviously this is a bit low because I've had mine dripping out. I'm going to just use the turkey baster to get rid of any excess fluid that's left in the reservoir, and then I'm going to fill it up with fresh fluid, fill it right up because it'll get used, and keep monitoring the level while you're pumping. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Okay, so brake fluid reservoir is topped up right to the brim, and again just keep an eye on that level. You don't want it to get too low, otherwise there's going to get air in. So I might just even see if I can top that off 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to crack this off. Okay. Brake. Okay.
Let go.
Yeah, let go. Okay, now you can see there's fluid coming out. And then we're just going to basically, just videoing. We're just going to look for, obviously it's hard to see on camera, I need to stick my head in there with a light. We're just going to look for any bubbles in the fluid, and then we're just going to wait until we have no more of them. until we've got fresh fluid coming out and it's just fluid. So I'm going to do that, and yeah, we'll just repeat that process. So I'll get back to you later. Okay, so weird transition, as is a while later. I literally had to go after bleeding the brakes, like there and then. I had to go on a road trip, so I needed to do it. But I didn't want to miss the opportunity of filming it for you. So I basically went around the car in the same pattern. Just again, I went rear. If you sat in the car, I went rear, left side because it's furthest away from the reservoir. I bled that. Then I went rear right. Then I went front left, and then I went front right because that's like under the thing. So you're working your way closer to the reservoir every time. Keep checking the level in your reservoir, because if it goes too low, then you'll gulp air, and then basically you've got air in the system again. You've got to do it all again. Now the brakes on this Merc are pretty soft, and I've heard that's quite a thing anyway. You know, it's just a thing. You know, I might get some braided lines at some point and different pads and all that sort of stuff. But the pedal feels pretty soft. But this still felt a bit softer than usual, a bit softer than I was expecting. So a trick which I heard online, which I did, was to basically go back to the furthest away caliper. So you think, right, I'm going to do it again. But all I did was I went back to the furthest away caliper, got the setup ready, and then what you do is you get someone to, or yeah, this is easiest if you got two people. Get someone to pump the brakes until they're going as hard as they can, so they'll build up pressure. You're pumping them, and they go rock solid, and then keep your foot on it, so the pressure's on it. And then when they say, yeah, as you build up that pressure, crack the bleed nipple then, and you'll just get like a big sponge of air coming out, just like boom. If there's any air, in theory, it should have worked its way to the end. And I did that and repeated for all the other calipers, and then yeah, basically the brakes were fine. So yeah, that's basically it. I showed you how to do it. Hopefully this helps you, whether you've just come for the brake fluid change or whether you've come for the caliper change. Yeah, hopefully that helps you. If you did, please subscribe, and please like the video, and you know, save it to your playlist, whatever people do on YouTube nowadays. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.